It's been 4 long years since I last watched One Piece, with me leaving off at the end of Wano Act 1. Fast forward all these years later, and I finally caught up to it. You know how much of a behemoth of an arc this had to be, continuing on for about 4 years? Insane! That being said, let's get into it. Strap up your straw hats, sharpen your swords, and don't forget your artificial devil fruits, because we're sailing straight into the wild, vibrant, and emotionally loaded chaos that is the Wano arc of One Piece. This isn't just another pit stop on the journey to the One Piece. Nah. Wano is the arc where Oda basically looked at everything he built over the past decade and said, "You thought Dressrosa was long? Hold my sake." Wano is the culmination of years of world building, seeded all the way back in Punk Hazard, continuing on in arcs such as Dressrosa, Zou, and Whole Cake Island. Think of those arcs as the 4 horsemen of build-up, and Wano is the apocalyptic payoff. We first hear whispers of Kaido and the samurai way back on Punk Hazard. Dressrosa expands upon Doflamingo, the linchpin of the Smile production, and gives Law some serious revenge baggage. Zou introduces the Mink tribe, more of the road poneglyphs, and crucially, Wano itself. Whole Cake Island? That's essentially Sanji's personal trauma arc, but also introduces us to Big Mom, a fellow Yonko, who becomes more relevant in Wano. Wano is split into 3 acts, mimicking aspects of Japanese culture such as kabuki theater. Act 1 introduces us to the land of Wano, resembling the feudal and more traditional period of Japan, which I thought was cool to see. It also shows us the political hellscape that is Wano under the rule of Orochi and his enforcer, Kaido. This arc did an incredible job of showing how terrifying Kaido is in terms of scale, size, and power. It was even mentioned after the arc when the newest Navy Admiral, Ryo Kugyu, arrived to hunt Luffy that Kaido was the main deterrent for enemies such as other pirates and the Navy coming into the land of Wano. And when we continue through this video, you'll see that in full display. We're also introduced to Tama, who was the sweetest little girl, and through her conversation with Luffy, we also find out that she met Ace a long time ago. This will extend into another point I want to make, but Oda is really amazing at creating countless lore for characters and finding new ways to involve them into the story. For example, as many One Piece fans know, Ace died a long time ago, about 400 to 500 episodes prior to Luffy meeting Tama. So the fact that Oda is still able to find new ways to include him into the series is amazing, and we even find out more in Act 3. But I'll leave that info for that section of the video, which you can jump around to using the timestamps. Another way in which Oda does this is by giving past and defeated villains of the Straw Hats and characters of the world more chances to shine besides their initial introduction. For example, the Supernovas / Worst Generation we met at Saburi Archipelago get the chance to shine in this arc, about a couple hundred episodes later. This includes, but isn't limited to, Kid, Killer, Scratchman Apu, Hawkins, and X-Drake. It might seem insignificant to some, but I love this as it truly makes One Piece this living, breathing, and interconnected world, showing that these characters have their own lives outside of them meeting the Straw Hats. I'm here for the journey, so the more lore Oda wants to dump in, the better. This is also where we see the embryo of Momonosuke's arc and a continuation of the same arc. At this point, he's still the scared, stammering little boy from Punk Hazard, claiming to be a shogun, but barely putting himself out there as a leader. The gap between his name and confidence, that's where Wano starts digging. This is also the arc that gives us the epic Luffy vs Kaido fight. Well, at least the first time. This happens because Luffy busts into a rage, thinking Kaido hyper-beamed his crew out of existence. Mind you, Kaido was in dragon form and absolutely terrifying, running amok while being drunk out of his mind. Luffy manages to give him a few good hits, smashing him out of dragon form. But when Kaido starts to sober up and reverts to his human form, goodness gracious, Luffy was cooked. Kaido gave him one hit of lightning bagua and sent Luffy to the Shadow Realm. This moment was excellent because despite Luffy using Gear 4th, it showcased that Kaido was an emperor for a reason with his immense strength and influence. This ending perfectly segues into Act 2, which is the calm before the storm. Before I get into the details, may I say that this act dragged on the most? Like, I know we had important things to set up, but the pacing of some of these episodes were completely horrific, dog. That's the thing about watching the anime that almost deterred me from it, the arc itself. Like Dressrosa was good, great even. However, it was plagued by bad pacing throughout it. mostly in this one though. To y'all who watched this as it was airing week to week for 4 years straight, deserve compensation, because I don't know how y'all do it. I say that as I did the same thing for Dressrosa, but I was in Spain without BS. That being said, enough complaining from me, and let's get into the good parts. Here, we get to understand the backstory of Wano and how tragic it was. In Dressrosa, it was people being transformed into toys and objects. In Wano, it was about the struggles of those who ate the smile fruit. It made sense why Doflamingo and Kaido worked so well. Birds of a feather flock together. The smile fruit was made by Caesar, the scientist. It was made to grant whoever ate it animal-like abilities, which only happened 10% of the time. The other 90% of the time, it robbed the eater of their ability to express negative emotion. Legit, when I found this out, my heart sank. These people lived under tyranny and slavery, working for below the bare minimum, and then they get this? What made this even more sickening was the fact that Orochi did this on purpose, because he despised the Kozuki clan and the people of Wano for their past hatred of his clan, the Kurozumi. So instead of tossing out the defective fruits, he tossed it to the villagers, knowing what it would do. Absolute scum. Even Kaido at one point said something along the lines of, "You've got a sick sense of humor, Orochi." For someone like him to be saying that, you know you're a sick man. This act also shows the alliances between the Straw Hats, the Minks, the Samurai, and Law's Hearts Pirates, solidifying in preparation for the upcoming war. We also get more of an insight into the Akazaya 9, not only as Oden's retainers, but as fellow individuals. This includes finding out that Kyoshiro was Denjiro, and how he continued to protect Hiyori, under the guise of being Orochi's henchman. We find out that Kawamatsu was in prison and became an essential part of Luffy's prison journey. Yes, you heard that right, and more. Despite Luffy's prison journey being long, it showcased the struggles of the prisoners and the slavery and labor they go through, and gives us Eustace Kid in return. It also gave us Luffy learning Ryo, which was essentially an advanced armored haki. This would allow Luffy to project his haki outward and damaging his opponent from the inside, which paid off big time in Act 3. The last thing I want to mention in Act 2 was the death of Yasui. If there's one thing the show has been able to make me do, it's cry like an absolute baby. Past moments include the death of Ace, the departure from the Going Merry, and Senor Pink's backstory. Oda is a master of making you feel, whether it be good or bad. It reminds me of a quote I heard way back, but can't remember who it's by. It goes, "They will forget what you said, what you did, but they will never forget how you made them feel." This quote embodies One Piece for me, and why it is the biggest manga and anime ever. The fact that Oda can evoke emotions like these, along with flawlessly progressing a story for almost 30 years, is insane. It wasn't just the death that got me. At this point, all hope was lost. The rendezvous plan was found out, and Yasui's speech sparked hope and life to the rebellion. Combine that with the fact that Yasui was the happiest dude on the planet, and then losing that smile only when he saw his daughter Otoko coming to see him at his execution, broke my heart. I truly cried like a baby at this point in time. Now, let's dive into easily the best act of them, the third one. The beginning of this act starts off with the full backstory of Oden, who is easily one of the most lovable characters shown in a long time. Everything from his "Oden wouldn't be Oden if it wasn't boiled" catchphrase, him unwittingly gaining followers, his journey with Whitebeard and Gold Roger, and then his final encounter with Kaido and Orochi, resulting in him standing in the literal boiling pot to save his friends and country, was phenomenal. Oden was so lovable, it felt like I was watching a version of Luffy, but in a different time period. That man was a king, RIP to a real one. Before I forget to say it, the animation in this section was phenomenal, and the pacing in regards to Oden's backstory was even better. So you can only imagine my surprise when we segue into the battles and we're back to bad pacing. The other highlights include Jinbei coming back and officially joining the team, the introduction of the Tobi Roppo, the introduction of Yamato, and more. How the hell did Kaido make Yamato? Jokes aside, I love her character design with the silver and blue hair, the purple ring or whatever the thing you call is around her, the horns, and the spike she carries with her. I love seeing how she met Ace and how he gave her hope from being related to Kaido. Their friendship was beautiful. Also, the fights in this were absolute eye candy. Zoro and Sanji embedding their haki into their techniques, which resulted in Sanji's blue flame, and Zoro's new slash had me in a chokehold. Also love Sanji's dilemma with being considered the same as his family and wanting to be nothing like them. Getting to see the supernovas fight Big Mom and Kaido was hella fun. Zoro blocking their combined shot was insane, and the animation was a 10 out of 10. Big Mom's devil fruit was hella broken, essentially breathing life into any inanimate object. Now that's a lady I wouldn't want to mess with. And then having the awakening of Kid and Law's devil fruits were fire, with Kid being able to turn anyone/anything into a magnet, and Law being able to provide solid objects like a sword with the ability to create rooms. With this, he can perform internal shocking on his enemies, which they cannot defend against. We also have Momonosuke turning into a big dragon, becoming an adult, helping to stop Onigashima from crashing into the flower capital was pretty cool. He also gives a speech which ends the tyranny of Orochi and Kaido's rule and creates a new era, now fully embracing his name, which means peerless. It truly was beautiful to watch him grow, as you realize that Momonosuke was like 8 the entire time. So even though he became an adult, it was going to take some time getting used to growing into that position. Now you may be wondering, aren't you forgetting something important? To that point, you would be right, because I wanted to save it for the end of this video. This would be Luffy's awakening, aka the beauty that is Gear 5. Goodness gracious, this was an absolute beauty to watch. So much so that I couldn't believe my eyes, even rewatching other people's reactions to it. Listen, if Joy Boy had Looney Tunes energy, it would be Gear 5. This form turns Luffy into a literal cartoon god. He bounces around with more energy than he knows what to do with, breaks the law of physics, grabs lightning bolts, and fights Kaido with the energy of a child hopped up on sugar, and yet it works. It's thematically perfect. Luffy's freedom, his joy, his ideology becomes his weapon. It's a masterpiece, weaving storytelling and animation so seamlessly. Every time Gear 5th Luffy was shown on screen, I had the biggest smile on my face because I loved him. His constant laughing and goofiness were an absolute treat and charm. Isn't it funny how the 5 elders planned to assassinate Luffy, only resulting in their worst nightmares? I know this is gonna sound corny, but this transformation made me glad that I was alive and that I had caught up to the end of Wano. I even sent one of my mates a snap of me saying the same thing, which I'll have my editor put up on screen. This one was a long time coming. Mind you, I'd been continuing Wano from Act 2 around April/May this year. Damn it, I'm glad I made my way through it. I've heard that the Egghead arc is pretty good, but I want to save myself the time and just start reading One Piece instead. This way, I can get through it faster and then rewatch the important parts after finishing the arc. And for this, I got a Kindle, so let me show you. I got the basic one, but I got the Kindle because what do I look like collecting that many volumes? If you guys want updates for the channel, I usually post in the community tab of my channel, anywhere from weekly to monthly. This way, you'll get a good gauge out of what I'm working on and where I'm at in life. To my book nerds, I finished Morningstar a couple days ago as of making this, and I'll try to get that video out to y'all soon. Thank y'all for the love and support, and this is Black Sugar Lovin', out.